I think that's the best introduction we've ever had to this
Oh man, that
to
was
this interview.
amazing. That was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of 2 Feet Deep. We want to thank Silverman Sound for producing all of the royalty-free music that you hear in today's episode. If you're interested in experiencing some royalty-free music for yourself, head on over to silvermansound.com. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to 2 Feet Deep, where we have fun with Christian concepts and theology through a variety of ways. I'm Eddie Bromley. I'm here with my good buddy Derek Markgraf. What's up, Derek?
Oh man, a rocky start for me today, but that's okay. We're in place and we're ready to rock and roll.
We are ready to rock and roll.
We're going to give it a whirl, folks, and see how it goes.
All right. Well, we're ready for entertainment exegesis.
Entertainment exegesis.
Take a deep dive into something entertainment-based. Could be sports, music, movies, books, holidays, but today it's none of those. It's doom scrolling. Derek, do you know what doom scrolling is?
I'm going to be honest. I read Doomscrolling and Our Secret Fear of Living, and I was like, I have no idea what we're talking about today.
Okay, so doom scrolling made its way into the vernacular during the pandemic. Doom scrolling made its way into the vernacular during the pandemic, and doom scrolling is the practice of scrolling through the internet or scrolling through YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, purposely looking for articles about how everything's falling apart, how the world's coming to an end, how everything's just going to hell in a handbasket. And it's the morbid fascination with keeping up with that.
Yeah, that seems, I mean, a morbid fascination would be the the accurate description of that. No, I don't know that I've done too much doom scrolling in my life. But I mean, that sounds interesting. I could see why people would get caught up in that, especially around times when things seem like they're not going great. Certainly during the pandemic.
Yeah. So, during the pandemic, when the numbers of deaths were just spiraling out of control, and people would just every day be just purposely looking for the worst news of the worst news. And of course, when the war with Russia and Ukraine started, one of the hottest searched items at that point was World War III, how to survive a nuclear war. When we had some of our economic problems over the last few years, I mean, people would scroll, "Are we in a new depression?" That kind of thing. And so the word doom scrolling was created to describe this just obsessive worry and this obsessive need to find out if the world's coming to an end, I guess.
I guess it kind of puts in reality our fears. I mean,
Yes.
puts them right there in front of us. If people are doing that, I don't honestly, like I said, I don't think I've ever done anything where I'm just constantly. I guess the closest relation I might have to that is we live in a highly tornadic area, you and I. And so during tornado seasons, when storms come, I'm definitely looking at my radar quite a bit to kind of see what's happening, where are these storms, such as yesterday, we had storms come through our area. And, are my kids going to be in a safe place? Am I going to be in a safe place? I think about the closest that I could come to the idea of doom scrolling is that constant watching out because I am fearful of something that could happen.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, I guess is that a fair a fair analogy?
Yes, it is. And so what I've linked is a really great video, and I don't think the young lady that does it is a Christian, though she certainly has what I would consider a very positive worldview. And the video is called "Why We Secretly Want the world to end. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to spoil the whole video, but essentially what she says is that life's hard, it's unfair, it's dangerous, it can be sad, and that there's a part of us that sometimes secretly wishes it would just all come to an end, or that it could just restart. Maybe a new world would be born out of that. But at the end of the video, she reminds us that no matter how difficult life has been for any of us, to simply be alive is a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. And the Bible verse that I came up with to complement her video was Psalm 34:8. Taste
Hmm.
and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him.
What a there's a lot of power in that verse to understand that, for those of us who have faith, that when there's things that are rough, bad, sad, hard in our lives, that there is something that we can still turn to that provides us with hope that is eternal. And I love just the whole verse. First, that idea of tasting that the Lord is good, experiencing that hope, and then taking refuge in that, knowing that you can put one foot in front of the other. Tomorrow's going to be okay. And if it's not tomorrow, it's the next day. And you just keep going and everything's going to be all right. I did not get a chance to watch this video. I saw it's a pretty lengthy video, about an hour long. So she's probably she must have quite a bit to say that you've summed up in a matter of 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But but I love this idea for those who have a little more struggle in finding the bright side of life. That that there's even people that may, or like you said, she may be a Christian, she may not be a Christian. It's apparently not part of her video if she is, that have still a better outlook on life is worth living.
Yes.
There's experiences here that are wonderful, in the relationships that we build, in the experiences that we can have, in the tastes that we get in our food, the smells of our day. This is very much a life worth living, and we all have a purpose here.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to move to, and I'm going to have you some point try to guess what the theme of this show is, and but we're going to move to what the what?
What the what?
Where we try to answer maybe a question about the Bible or a Bible verse. And Derek, the question I pose for you today, one I've heard many times, is: isn't the book of Revelation a scary book? Is the book of Revelation meant to scare me? What is? How would you answer that question?
Well, for starters, yes, of course it is, isn't it? It's got a dragon in it.
Puff the Magic Dragon also has a dragon in it.
Yeah. And I will say the dragons are slightly different between those two stories, but
a little bit, yeah.
No, I think that Revelations. Okay, so it's interesting. I approach it from kind of two different ways. As a minister, what's scary to me about it is how to teach it. Not that it's not that the book itself is scary, but there is a lot of symbolism, a lot of that I'm always a little nervous about. Like, am I getting this right? And I guess some of that is time will tell. But I always just have looked at it as it's a book about the future. I think there's some things in it, like when I was going through it with my kids when they were younger. I was talking. I would focus on the end of the book, and it's like, hey, we win. There's, this is a good book, because you read you read it, we win. Are there scary elements in it? I think there's scary elements in life in general. So sure, there can be, depending on how you face it, how you approach it. But overall, I don't think that it's specifically a scary book. I think it's a challenging book, and I think that there is some themes in it that are worth wrestling with. But I don't want to go too much farther into stealing any thunder that you may have set before you. So you go ahead and I can see your face.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job, man. No, I'm enjoying listening. Well, what I have posted in the notes, and I'll admit that the book is quite costly, but it's a very, very good book called The Climax of the Prophecy, Studies in the Book of Revelation by Richard Bauckham. He's a British scholar, and early in my days of studying the book of Revelation helped me to really understand the context of what I was reading. I
Wow.
also really recommend Bamaw's very lengthy treatment of the Book of Revelation. I believe that's in season 4. Very, very good. Distills a lot of scholarly work into probably about 14 podcasts. Very, very good stuff. But I think the biggest takeaway that I got from studying the historical context is that the Book of Revelation was written to churches that were already going through some pretty tough and in some cases some pretty scary stuff. And the book was written to encourage them to have faith, courage, hope during the midst of difficult things they were already going through. And of course, the idea would be is that over the next 20 centuries or however long the church and the world endure, from time to time, God's people will go through difficult things. And like you said, the message is that Christ has already won. In the end, the victory is ours, and to give us hope to keep moving to that future, even if getting to that future means going through some very, very difficult things.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. And folks, when he says that it's a hefty price tag, we're not talking $50. Because I just looked it up and I was like, "Holy cannoli, that's a price tag for a book." He's pretty proud of that book, but um, it's not cheap.
It's not cheap.
However, is it? I mean, like I'm assuming this is a pretty thick read.
Yeah, it's a thick read. Lots of footnotes.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure it's well worth every penny for those who are readers and get into that. Now, I am a Baymaw listener too, obviously. I have not made it to the Revelation episodes yet, but they are something that I'm greatly looking forward to, as I am self admitted not a Revelations expert at all. And I like how you focused there for a second to say how this really helped you. These two studies really helped you get a much better understanding of the book. Because I think for the average reader that reads through the book, it doesn't make a lot of sense for folks.
Yep.
It is of all the books in the Bible, it's a very challenging book to wade through. Um, why do you think that is?
Well, I think it is challenging because the symbols that and imagery that are used in the book of Revelation made perfect sense to Jewish Christians living between the years 200 BC and 200 AD. And I don't think that the symbols and the imagery makes a lot of sense in our culture because it's different. So when I took Revelation from Dr. Mulholland at Asbury Seminary, he started the lecture, the very first lecture, by saying, "I'm going to ask a question, and if you are from the United States or Canada, you're not allowed to answer the question. Only my international students are allowed to answer the next question." And he put up a picture, and this was during the season of the political life in the United States when Bill Clinton was being impeached by a Republican Congress. But it was actually going far worse for the Republican Congress than it was for Bill Clinton. And Dr. Mulholland puts up a picture of an elephant and a donkey, and they're boxing, and
Mm-hmm.
he asked his international students to guess what it means. Now, every student from Canada and America knows that it's about the Democratic and Republican parties fighting, as symbolized by the elephant and the donkey. But students from places like Vietnam, where donkey and an elephant are farm animals, thought maybe it was an maybe something was happening in the agricultural life of America. Maybe there was fighting among farmers or something, and their guesses were just way, way wrong. Because those symbols meant completely different things in the parts of the world where they were from than they meant to people from the United States and Canada. And so they just didn't have the cultural reference to make sense of the political cartoon they were looking at. And I think that's very, very similar to what's happening in Revelation. So, for instance, the woman who's dressed in purple, who sits on the seven hills with the seas at her feet, nobody in John's original audience needed to have that explained. The seven hills were the seven hills of Rome. The goddess Roma is the one that sits on those seven hills, and the seas of the world are at her feet because she rules them all. Nobody in John's audience needed that explained to them, but nearly everybody reading the book of Revelation today needs that explained to them.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah, and they're just
that's a fantastic analogy there. I went to a story in my mind where I had watched. I don't know if you've ever heard of David Platt, but he was a pretty famous minister for a while. I don't know if people may or may not know him, but at one time he was somebody that people paid a lot of attention to. And I remember watching one of his sermons one time, and he was telling a story about a trip to India that he had taken, and he had taken a cab. And when he got out of the cab, there was this language barrier, and about how much he needed to pay them. And so he offered them money, and he said, "Is this enough?" And they would shake their head side to side, like so. Not up and down, which we would assume up and down would be yes. It wasn't like the way that we shake our head no. It was more like the top of his head going to each shoulder. And and so he thought, okay, well, that's not enough. So he offered them more, and they said, "Is this enough?" And then they did the same gesture, and finally he just gave him some, where I don't know about the third or fourth op or some of the money. And it turns out that side to side movement was, yes, this is acceptable. This is an acceptable amount of pay. But the culture difference was, completely opposite of what he was used to, because we move our head up and down for, yes, this is acceptable. So immediately when you started telling me about the cultural difference and understanding, that's the one I went to for that kind of description of, there are sometimes that just things get lost in translation from culture to culture, and Revelations is definitely one that. But you know what we've learned through, what I've learned a lot through Bema too, is just a whole lot of our understanding of especially Old Testament scripture, but even New Testament scripture too, and Jewish practices, Jewish traditions. For those of us in the West that aren't Jews, we're missing a lot when we don't understand what those cultural meanings were.
Yeah. Well, you bring up the Old Testament. That's another thing. The book of Revelation is dripping in Old Testament. I mean, honestly, there's probably not a single verse that doesn't have some allusion back to something in the Old Testament. Without a very, very, very strong grasp on the Old Testament, you're just not going to understand it all. So take the two witnesses. The two witnesses go out and witness against Babylon. They're able to stop the rain and call down fire and a number of things. And anyone reading that part of Revelation is going to understand that the two figures being alluded to are Elijah and Moses, who confront the powers. But then they're killed in the street, and it is actually through their death that the powers of this world are overthrown. And so now we're talking about the people of God not necessarily taking on the roles of Moses and Elijah, but instead imitating their crucified Lord as they confront the powers of this world. And again, without a strong background in the Old Testament, it's just lots and lots of the meaning of Revelation is just going to be really completely lost on the reader. And so I always think, okay, if you're new to the Bible, you've got to at least read the Old Testament once before you read Revelation, or nothing you're going to read there is going to make a bit of sense. I mean, just none of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I think that's great.
All right. It's time for His name, News Game.
His name, News Game. Yippee, skippy. I'm on the wrong side of the game today.
Okay, and so yeah, so at this point, man, I'm going to be really curious to see if you can catch the theme now. So this is from interestingengineering.com. Billionaires around the world are building and paying for luxury doomsday bunkers to survive a possible impinging apocalypse that may or may not be upon us. So, billionaires all over the world are spending huge amounts of money to have bunkers, not only where they can survive, but they can survive in style. Some of these have bars with some of these have large movie theaters in them. They have luxury sleeping accommodations. They have gourmet food that's been freeze dried and packaged for waiting out the end of the world. Just some of these bunkers would they'd put yours, my house to shame for sure. I mean, both in size and in style. So, what's your response to that?
Well, I think my first response is once again, the Illuminati at work. What do they know that we don't know?
Yes.
I guess okay, look, there's preppers all over the world. There really are, and I do think preparing to some extent for things unknown is wise. It's good. You look at you look at the story of Joseph, and God's call to him was to be a prepper. I mean, right? Wasn't that his warning? He's like, hey, there's going to be 7 years of great stuff going on here as he's interpreting Pharaoh's dream, and then there's going to be 7 bad years, and so during those 7 good years, we're going to need to be preppers so that we can prepare for what's to come, and and then we're going to make it through the bad years. Then God will take us out on the other side, and thanks to that wisdom, Joseph saved the nation of Egypt, and in doing so was able to save his family too. So saying that, on some sides, I think there's some wisdom in being able to prep, but I also think that billionaires just have loads of money and don't know have anything else to do with it, and so they're like, hey, let's build some bunkers underground and make everybody jealous that our underground bunker is going to be better than most people's above ground bunker. But I have read stories of Zuckerberg and some other people that are building these big, huge underground bunkers. And you know what? You got the money. Good for you. If I have that money, I'm probably still trying to get myself out of debt. but good for you. If you've got the money to go build yourself a giant underground bunker, then have at it. I don't know what else to say. That's the best tie-in I can think of is the Joseph
Brother,
story.
that was fantastic. But you know what? So when I read this story, I thought to myself, okay, if I had all that money, would I build that kind of bunker? Would I do that? And here's what's really weird about that. So the kinds of things that those are built to survive are things that you get no warning of. Like, for instance, if Russia launched missiles right now at us, their supersonic missiles hit in 15 minutes. Unless you're like already at the site of the bunker, like if you're somewhere else, that bunker's doing you no good. Right. If your bunker's in Montana and you're in Singapore, you're not getting back in time.
Right. Well,
if you're even 35 minutes away from it,
I was going to say you could be in a city over and not be back in time.
Well, all right. So, what do you think the theme of this show is?
Well, I mean, you're obviously there's obviously a death theme, and we're doom scrolling. Where the Revelation book is obviously considered to be the book of the end times. So there's obviously some fascination with death here. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I do have your next story in front of me, so I know that
Yeah.
it's also about predicted death. So this one,
That's
uh, you know, it really out of all the segments, this one is the most fascinating to me, and I haven't even read it yet. So,
Yeah,
but
so this one's from Scientific American, and it is really neat. There is now an AI tool that can predict with some degree of accuracy when you'll die.
and what segment is this?
This is,
Esch-
eschatological
Eschatological AI.
I.
I think that's the best introduction we've ever had to this
Oh man, that
to
is
this interview.
amazing. That was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing, folks. So this tool, this AI tool, can predict with a fair amount of accuracy when you'll die. Now, if this sounds far fetched, understand that life insurance companies do this kind of thing all the time with actuary numbers. You were in the life insurance business for a while. You probably know more about this than I do, but there's not a more informed group in the whole world than insurance companies. They study data, they crunch numbers all the time. They know the effects of smoking on you, not wearing your seatbelt. They know, based on your ethnicity, your sex, based on your eating habits. They have a pretty good guess as to when you're going to die. And this AI tool uses that same data just to really give you a pretty good idea of what your life expectancy is. Now, of course, it can't predict unpredictable things, but it can. But it can even factor in though what are your chances of being killed in an automobile accident or by a random act of violence. It has a mathematical formula for that as well, and so I actually uh, put all my information into this tool, and was disappointed to find out that I'm going to live a lot longer than I thought.
Oh no. So this tool is something that like is it online? We can. I mean, like I'm on the link, but I didn't realize that there was an actual tool on the link, or is it something that we have to download?
So I actually had to do a little bit of poking around, but it's a very easy thing to find. And in fact, I'll see if I can find it while I when as you give some of your thoughts and reflections. I'll see if I can find it and I'll send it to you.
Oh, okay. Well, and maybe if possible, might be something we can link in the show notes for folks too that are just
All right,
dying to know when they're going to check out.
you dying to know? That is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Did you see what I did
Uh,
there?
that was awesome.
Oh,
Uh,
me.
the,
Well, I mean, my initial thoughts is, like you said, I worked in insurance, and of course, there is tons of analysis over all of this data. Now, of course, I worked on the selling side, so I was never into the data side. I was just the person that was collecting data, and of course, there's just tons of information that we're collecting for those who are interested in getting life insurance, and it makes sense as to why you're getting all that information. Of course, not only your own medical history, but the medical history of your family, of your immediate family, your parents, and whatnot, because all of that plays a big effect. And so I think I'm not super surprised that there's obviously an AI tool that's being developed to help predict that and read that analysis, those analytics probably more effectively, faster. Um, but at the same time, still, it's still wild to think, okay, there's something I can put my information into, and it's going to spit out a time frame of when it thinks that I'm going to live or die. Uh, yeah, So, I mean, I think it's fascinating for sure. It makes me, and knowing
yeah.
that I'm a little jealous, knowing that you have already, you already know when you're going to die now, and I don't.
Yeah. Well, what it did when I'm looking. There's actually several of these tools online, so I'm not even sure which one to link. Some of them are better than others. When I put my data in, it said that I'm likely to hit 87 years old. Well, some days I feel like, man, death's door now, but if I'm going to live to 87, that means there's a number of things I need to do. One is I probably need to take better care of my health so that, the last 7 or so years isn't in misery. I probably also need to be a little better at saving for the future. At some point, I'm not going to be able to continue to work full time, and I don't want to eat Alpo for dinner. So, so I better put some money aside.
Mm-hmm.
Just a number of things that, having some sense of what your life expectancy might be. On the flip side of that, 87 isn't forever. And, and it leaves you with, only so many days, and those days start diminishing pretty quickly, and you don't want to waste a lot of those passing by things that are meaningful, like, spending time with your family, developing your spiritual life, maybe even just doing something you enjoy, like taking a walk or playing a guitar or watching a ball game. You just don't want to take those days for granted. So I think, in my mind, there's sort of a negative and a positive way of looking at what that information means.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think it definitely, and I think it's a good thing for us to all have reality checks from time to time. I mean, we need those, right? We need reality checks because we all have tendencies for this way or that way that can take us off the rails that aren't as healthy or aren't as good ideas, or, no matter who we are and what we've been through, there are some tendencies of ours that will take us to unhealthier places, whether that be spiritually, mentally, physically. And so these reality checks, I think, are good for us, which is how I would best say for people that are going to go out there and put their information into one of these things, that would be the best way to interpret the data. Don't fear the date that it gives you. Rather, use it to inspire you to live healthier, to make improvements in your life, as we all need to do on a daily basis. And I know, I got sick earlier this week, went to the doctor, thought I was going in to get a COVID and a flu check, which I did, and it was fine on those, but walked out getting now I'm on blood pressure medicine, and, I have fluid on my knee and some arthritis.
All right.
Woohoo!
Dang,
So
you got a
all
prize.
those things, yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. But it's just like that, just like going to a doctor, well, I can look at that as, oh gosh, that's all doom and gloom, or, hey, there's some things and areas in my life I need to clean up. I can get healthier, and I know I can. I know immediately there's some things I can do to make some quick changes that would help me feel better as a person in general. So those are good reality checks. And for those who go into one of these things and put their info in, that's what I would say. Take it as a reality check, as an opportunity to improve yourself going forward.
James 4:14 says, "Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes." Well, Derek, thank you so much, man. I think it's been a great show, and we've talked about doom scrolling and death and the end of the world, but in the end, we're in the hands of God, and eternity is hidden in our hearts, and so life matters. And with that, that's a wrap.
Man, good. I enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time, brother.
Bye-bye. All right, see you, man.
Once again, we want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today on 2 Feet Deep. If you would like to reach out with any questions or thoughts, please email us at 2feetdeeppodcast@gmail.com. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and we'll see you next time.